Hello, a very good evening and a warm welcome to you, Azran. Can you hear me clearly?
Loud and clear, Vikram. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. So now that we have done the audio video check, we are live on the Curious Mind series podcast. So a very good evening and a very rainy welcome. This part of the town in KL, Azran. I don't know what is
That's right.
happening your side of the town. It's raining as well.
It is indeed, yes.
Okay. So a very rainy, warm welcome from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia to all our guests across the region, across the globe. It's 9 p.m. in Malaysia at this point in time. Well, to believe, it is very hard to believe that it's already 2025. A
Mm,
year as a year, it is simply flying past by so quickly. We are already at the end of February. It is very difficult for me to believe. I'm not sure about you, Azran, but this last 2 months have just flown by, whether it is the New Year's, whether it is the CNY, and on Saturday, the Ramadan fasting month is starting. So I'm just trying to grapple with the fact that 2 months of this year of 2025 have just gone by.
that's right, indeed.
Well, today is our first episode of the Curious Mind series in 2025 and our 16th overall. And given all what people are going through in their lives currently, I couldn't have asked for a better topic and a great speaker rather than Azran tonight as the first episode for us in 2025. Super glad and excited to have none other than Azran Osman Rani as a guest speaker tonight, who's going to share his candid thoughts and super insights on mental health and resilience, as well as its direct connection or connection with team resilience in an unfiltered and a live form. Welcome, Azran, once again. It's really an honor to have you with us tonight.
Oh, thank you very much. The honor is mine, Vikram.
Thank you so much. Well, to our guests who are watching us live right now, I know I do the maximum part of the talking at the start and then it all goes to the guest speaker. So hold on to your guns. We will dive straight into it. But before that, I would want to introduce Azran in a very brief way. It's too much of a rich experience and amazing university from where he's graduated from. But I would leave it to you to go out there on LinkedIn and check it out yourself. I'm not going to say it. What I'm going to say is Azran is a very well known figure in Malaysia as well as within the region and probably globally as well. Someone wearing several hats. Azran is a venture founder. He is a speaker. He's an author who's helping his clients build a mentally resilient, physically healthy, and a high performing organization. He is the CEO and founder of a very famous organization, startup here, which has been doing really well called Naluri. Azran is also the chairman and investor for Money Match and was the CEO for iFlix, along with being the CEO of AirAsia X in the past. And author of the book 30 Days and 30 Years, The Sprint and the Marathon of Breakthrough Performance, and much, much more. So I would recommend all you viewers to who really don't know yet about Azran to go on to LinkedIn or Google him up, and you will get to hear a lot about, or you'll get to see a lot about what all Azran has been doing. And before we begin our session about the questions in a curious way, just to reiterate to some of our guests who are watching this live, probably for the first time, either on LinkedIn or on YouTube, the core essence of the Curious Mind series podcast is that we have only agreed the topic with the guest speaker, and therefore, in this case tonight, Azran is not aware of the questions which I'm going to shoot at him, or for that matter, the ones which are going to come from you as well online. So you can type in your questions. Azran is not aware what is going to come from you, what is going to come from me, and his responses are going to be candid, honest, and absolutely unfiltered. How does that sound, Azran?
I'm really excited and look forward to this.
Okay, I'm going to dive into it straight. And if for my audience who have any questions or comments or love you want to share, just type it on either if you're watching us on LinkedIn or you're watching us on YouTube. You can actually just type in the questions, and we'll be more than happy to respond to it or just put up your comment up here. So let the show begin. First, foremost question on mental health and resilience. Now, post the pandemic, Azran, as people
Mhm,
got back into the hybrid work mode again, there has
mhm.
been a lot of emphasis we have seen on mental health and resilience. Can you
Mhm.
help share with us the core definition or meaning of mental health and resilience in a very simple term or manner?
Well, first, I do have to say, my mission is to disassociate the term mental health from a typical connotation of it being an illness or weakness, because health can also be positive health, to be mentally fit and ready, and especially the power of the human mind to be able to grasp the kind of challenges and pressures and to be able to continue to focus and perform better.
Okay, so that's a very positive outlook of looking at it, and that is exactly the reason where the moment somebody says, and it is a taboo, if I go out there today and in a community and I say, you know what, I think I'm facing a mentally challenging situation, or I think I'm going through mental health crisis, I don't think there are going to be people out there who would look at it very positively, and they're going to say there is definitely some problem with Vikram. Isn't that true, Asran?
Indeed, it is, yes.
Okay.
That's why for me, the way I would start by thinking about it is our mental health exists on a spectrum, right? And typically on one side, we associate kind of the negative words like depression, anxiety, stress, burnout, and loneliness. But it's also important to understand what does positive mental health look like, right? It is about resilience, the ability to persevere. It's about focus, optimism, curiosity, and connectedness. It helps us understand the mental health universe when you look at it across both sides of that spectrum.
Okay, very interesting. And so, for audience who are watching us, yes, that is a very positive outlook of looking at it. But why is mental health and resilience given so much importance and relevance in today's world? Was it not prevalent earlier too? Were there not people who were going through mental health challenges or issues or had stronger resilience? If we go back in history, whichever country we talk about, people were going through that. But why do you think it has become so much of prevalent and importance at this point in time? Is it because the multi-generational workforce which has come into place,
Mm,
or
mm.
something else? What are your thoughts around it?
So first, I challenge a potential notion that it's just more about awareness, because study after study have shown that we quantify levels of mental distress, right, depression, anxiety, and stress, rates across populations have tripled over the last generation, right? So, for example, back in the early 2000s, rate of mental distress here in Malaysia would be at about that 10 to 11% of population. Today, it is in excess of 30%, right? And so it is clearly something that has grown. Now, not coincidentally, even rates of obesity, rates of diabetes and heart disease have gone through similar growth rates, right? And there is a very clear link because of lifestyle changes that have occurred over the last couple of decades.
And how does then that relate directly to uh, a mental health? I mean, I will come to the resilience part of it later,
Sure.
but how does that connection of a lifestyle have to your
Mm.
mental health?
Okay. So first, when we think about our ability to handle pressure, our ability to focus, our ability to connect with people, right? Think about a few different elements. And I'm going to start with sleep, the
Okay.
quality of our sleep, not just in quantity of hours, but the quality of hours. Because when sleep gets disrupted, um, the brain's ability to kind of clear off all the cobwebs gets impaired, right? And so we're waking up today in a world of a lot of digital distractions, not as refreshed and recharged as we're used to. Number two, when our diets change, right? When we suddenly have much more sugar and processed foods, right? And it makes it harder for the body to regulate levels of stress cortisol hormones, right? And therefore, our ability to kind of calm down, we become even more excitable, right? Exercise, for example, we now learn that when we move, in particular when muscles contract, there are proteins called myokines that go to the brain that help the brain to focus and concentrate. And a sedentary lifestyle means less myokines, less hormones to enable us to focus and concentrate. So lifestyle factors like the food we eat, our ability to move, how we sleep, have a direct bearing on the quality of mental health.
Okay, very interesting. And it is a known fact. So I will come to the fact that some of the insights which you're sharing are something which people know. The interesting question here is, why don't people change when they know that? So even if I know, for example, and I'm not going to talk about somebody else, if I know, for example, that a phone in the night at 12, or if suddenly when I wake up for water or a toilet break in the night at 2 o'clock, when I look at the phone, it is going to disturb my sleep at that time, but I still do. So while I'm extremely consciously aware I shouldn't, what drives me to still do it?
Indeed. It's no different than, say, a cardiologist who still smokes. So knowledge and awareness alone doesn't translate into behavioral change. Just like, for example, in Malaysia, I'll share a very interesting statistic. When Malaysians go see their doctor for their medical checkup, and the doctor says, you really need to cut down on sugary and processed foods, exercise more because I can see the weight going up beyond healthy levels and your blood sugar and blood pressures are rising. 100% of Malaysians will go, yes, doctor. But when they go home, 74% of them do not make any changes to the lifestyle. So knowledge alone is not sufficient. And that is because the way the brain operates, there's a big difference between the conscious, rational part of the brain and the subconscious part of the brain. So the conscious prefrontal cortex of the brain can logically say, yeah, this is what I should do. But the limbic system of the brain, the subconscious, is so powerful. It doesn't like new things. It likes the familiarity of existing routines, even if those routines are not healthy, right? And so we've got to kind of go beyond trying to convince people based on the logic of the change, but look at what the subconscious patterns that people fall into to kind of really address true behavioral change.
Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. Some great answers coming through and lots of wisdom coming through within the first 13 minutes itself of this podcast. So, the audience who's watching us either on LinkedIn or YouTube, if you have a question or a comment, just type it in. Like I said in many of my episodes before, we do not see you. We don't know who is the one who's attending this. So, unless you comment or you write a question, we will not come to know what is your query in your mind or what is that you would want to share. So keep sharing, keep commenting. Moving on to the next question, I dived into it straight, but I still wanted to kind of go back into history. Given your education, given your background of the various organizations you have gone through, what was your core essence? So what was your reasoning behind starting something like Naluri? What's the core essence which drives you with this organization forward?
Across most of my life, it has been curiosity. I've always asked, well, why are things done a certain way and why can't it be done differently? Right. So I've always looked at situations and kind of go back to first principles and say, I wonder why people do things one way. Is there a different way? So, for example, in Naluri, and the genesis of Naluri was this kind of reflection that I had when I lost my father. to diabetes and cancer. And I realized, number one, the healthcare system seemed to be so focused on its physical care, insulin, medication, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, surgery, but no one really thought about the depression and anxiety that chronic disease patients go through. When you don't provide support and care in that dimension, that would lead to skipped chemo sessions, missed medication, and things kind of just got worse. So why is the hospital system today so siloed by specialization and does not link mental and physical health? Number two, why is it that hospitals and the medical system wait for you to become really sick and distressed and expect you to come to them, right? Is there a different way of doing it? Can't we build data models to predict when people may have early risk factors and help them there rather than wait until it's become really costly and complex? And third, have you ever noticed why doctors still get paid whether you actually get healthy or not? Right? Is there a different model? And interestingly, this is where having kind of breadth of experience across industries allow me to kind of connect dots in ways that perhaps other people don't, because there's always a tendency to do things the same way if you've gone down this very deep path. That last question came from my experience in the airline industry. See, in the airline industry, one of the biggest costs that can unexpectedly burden an airline's financials is when your engine breaks down. So the engine of the aircraft is very costly and complex, right? And so you then start to wonder, if it breaks down and I've got to send it for repair, for additional spare parts, that maintenance and repair provider actually has a perverse incentive to not actually keep that engine, because the more it breaks down, the more they actually make money. And so the way airlines have addressed this is to say, let's not do a kind of when it breaks down, I'm going to pay you, but I'll pay you a fixed fee per flying hour. It's called power by the hour. And you got to fix or maintain that engine at that same cost. So it allows me as an airline to have a very predictable cost, and it incentivizes the maintenance and repair organization to keep that engine well and reduce the likelihood of breakdown. And so suddenly your incentives are aligned. Why can't we do that with healthcare?
Very, very noble, but at the same time, very practical thought of looking at it from a different lens, from a different perspective. And that is where I think that is what the genesis of Naluri is to where it is today, isn't it?
Indeed, it is. Yes.
Fantastic. I have the next question, but before I go on to the next question, we have one from our audience, somebody who watches us regularly, Vignesh, who has a question. So I'm going to put it up. Thanks, Vignesh. The question is the effect of the work environment, people, family surroundings, expectations, pressure, challenges a person in multiple dimensions, eventually lead them to break down. How could one help themselves and also help their colleagues, loved ones navigate these hurdles towards living a happier life?
Wow. So let's start again with the airline industry. Have you ever noticed when you board the plane and there's a safety briefing by the flight attendants? What they will always remind you is if the oxygen mask comes down, make sure to wear it on yourself first before putting it on your loved ones. It goes counter to our impulse to make sure I take care of my kids, for example. But by doing so, you're putting yourself at risk and therefore your children or your loved ones at risk. So the importance first is before we even help our colleagues and loved ones, are we in a position to handle ourselves? Because if we allow ourselves to be burnt out, we're not effective in taking care of our loved ones. So that is principle number one. Principle number two is, let me throw this idea of resilience is in a way knowing how to handle stress and pressure or even anxiety and turning it into positive energy. So pressure and stress is not necessarily to be avoided, but when you're confronted with it, you don't allow it to be overwhelming, but you know how to handle it. And I'd love to explore deeper today. How can we break it down so that we know how to confront those stressors and pressures that Vignesh has talked about?
Okay. Oh, I hope, Vignesh, that answers to your question. Very relevant. I think a very logical example of the airline industry. We always say that, even in HR, we say that, even in the coaching fraternity, we say that always take care of yourself first before you take care of your near and dear ones. So very practical. Thanks. I'll move on, and you can ask many more such questions similar to what Vignesh has asked. The next on my list, Azran, is, since childhood we are
Mm,
taught to be mentally tough. So we are said, you got to be mentally tough. But as we grow up, and as we've seen recently, we are advised to be vulnerable and
mm.
embrace situations. So, is mental health and resilience something which an individual can build over a period of time, or is it something which is inborn based on my upbringing?
Well, I'm sure you'll kind of most people would say, it is something that can be trained. It is something that can be developed, just like any skill set. I really equate it to physical health. So think about
Okay.
this, right? When we talk about building physical fitness, there are different aspects of physical fitness, right? There is stamina. There is strength, right? Like lifting weights. There's explosive speed, like Usain Bolt, or there's flexibility, like a gymnast, or coordination, like a Formula One driver. The same parallels exist. So if physical health is about stamina, mental health is about resilience, the ability to persevere despite challenges. If um, physical health is about strength, the equivalent in mental health is focus, the ability to focus and concentrate. If it's about speed, it's about optimism. I can look at the glass half full. If it's about flexibility like a gymnast, the mental health equivalent is curiosity to look at things from different angles. And coordination in physical fitness is also about connectedness in mental health. And so, just like how you would train for strength, how do I go to the gym regularly? How do I build my cardiovascular fitness? There are same exercises to build your resilience muscles, to build your focus muscles, and to build your curiosity muscles.
Okay, interesting. So you can, even if you've had whatever, different people have different childhood growth and experience. So whatever you've had, you can build it. You can build a absolutely better mental health and resilience model with yourself. And what
Mm.
you're also saying is, if you are physically fit, or if you wish to go on that path, there is a direct correlation and connection between the two. Am I getting it right?
Yeah, exactly. Or even, for example, if someone has gone through a very traumatic episode, right? Most people may be familiar with PTSD, post-traumatic stressful disorder, right? But there's also post-traumatic growth, PTG, where you turn that very traumatic experiences into an opportunity to grow and become stronger and more resilient. So it's not about this external stimulus, what happens to you that counts. It's your ability to handle it that makes a big difference in whether you come out of it stronger or you allow it to kind of crush you.
Okay, interesting, very interesting. Uh, I'm going to go a little deeper into the organization part of it. You in Naluri, and I've gone through your website. I've read a little bit of your articles. I've also read a little bit of your stories which have been there, the reports which have been there. What is resilient leadership? And you have launched something called as the Think model in
Mm.
Naluri. I'm sure it is your brains. Can you share some insights with us of what is resilient leadership and what is the Think model?
Sure. Well, the idea of coming up with the think model is to help people deconstruct the abstract notion of resilience into something that's more bite-sized and actionable. So the think model that we say, to understand and develop your resilience muscles, let's use the think framework to guide you. And think is basically the acronym for T, take control. What can I control? What do I not have control over? H stands for hopeful outlook. Where's the glass half full rather than the glass half empty? I is for informed actions. How do I respond to the situation intentionally rather than react impulsively out of fear or anger. N is about nurturing myself and my energy levels. How do I recharge to keep going? And finally, K, knowing your goals. Where are you going? What are your purpose? Right? And building resilience, whether at an individual level or at a team and organizational level, is to kind of look at the situations or challenges that you have ahead and think about THINK.
Wow, very interesting, and something which can be broken down into actionables and doing it. So then, I mean, it brings me immediately to the next question: is what can people do? So in a situation, so suppose I'm not talking about a PTSD situation or something like that. I'm saying a normal situation, and I'm going through stress in the daily, in my daily life. Now, what do I do? Do I use the think model at that point in time? What is in my control? How much of an energy am I using on that? And what can I do? So you're saying if I use the think model, it'll help me navigate and become more resilient in future?
Yeah, so perhaps let me use a personal story to illustrate how the think
Okay.
model is
Okay.
applied. Now, I'll take you back to May 2018, right? May 27th, 2018, 8:55 in the morning. I remember that day and time very clearly because that was the day my Garmin watch died at exactly 8:55 in the morning because I was cycling on a very quiet early Sunday morning road as part of my regular triathlon bike training when a car came from behind and hit me really hard. I was immediately knocked unconscious and I woke up 24 hours later in the emergency ICU ward of the hospital. Cracked skull, bleeding in my brain, thorax 4, 5, and 6 of my vertebrae fractured, 3 of my arms or limbs in a cast.
My
Now,
God.
number one, as I woke up and regained consciousness, I was overwhelmed with fear, with anxiety. What was going to happen to me? Am I going to be able to walk again? Um, what will I do with this new company that I've just started, the employees that I hired? How will I provide for my family? And many of us, right, especially during the COVID pandemic, when our ability to provide is shaken, it
Hmm.
really rattles us to the core, right? Now, luckily for me, I had one of my co-founders at Naluri, a psychologist, who kind of helped me say, look, all those questions that I had in my head, lying in that hospital bed, I had no answers. And yet they were going on and on and on this nonstop loop. And she sort of said, look, what is it that you can do today? I said, well, not much. I'm stuck in this bed, right? Well, what if it's just about learning how to get off the bed and learning how to walk again for the next 5 meters to that nurse's desk and back? If that's all you can do, that's all within your control, just focus on that. And that became my mission. Just take those first steps, even with one of my limbs still fractured and my balance was still very disoriented, but small progress, right? And by day 32, when I was finally discharged, I just carried on 5-minute walk, 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk. By day 47, I could pick up the pace and start to run again. Day 62, I could run outdoors for the first time. And the big milestone came on day 84 when by myself, I would have been terrified to get on a bicycle again. But I had
Hmm.
19 of my friends from my cycling group say, we're going to organize a ride with Ozrun to kind of ride around you to help you regain your confidence to get back on the bike.
Wow.
Day 112, my broken shoulder healed and I could get back my full rotation in my arm and I could start to swim again in the pool. I was so excited. I got out of the pool, went online, back to www.ironman.com and signed up for the next Ironman triathlon race in Langkawi. And day 174, slightly short of 6 months from that accident, I went back to Ironman triathlon racing. Now, I didn't start when that accident happened thinking I could even do that. I couldn't even think about walking, right? Now, interesting when people ask me, well, what would motivate you to do that? And I said, while I was lying in that hospital bed, some well-meaning friends and family members visit you, and they started to scold me. Hey, what are you doing cycling on Malaysian roads? Don't you know Malaysian drivers are reckless? You shouldn't be
mm,
taking those risks. You're a father. Think about your children.
mm.
And I thought about my children. And what dawned on me is that, and if you're a parent, right?
Yeah.
Our kids don't really listen to what we say,
Yes.
but they learn by watching what we do.
True.
Same thing with our team members at work, right? And what I wanted my kids to learn is life is tough, life is unfair, life is going to knock you down. And in my case, literally being smacked down. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can choose to decide how you're going to respond to it. And the most important lesson we've got to give our kids is to get back up when you get knocked down. And I can't tell that to my children, but here was a golden opportunity for me to show them how to get back up. And that's what I mean by that hopeful outlook, right? When you can define a purpose that says, you know what? Here's the positive I get from this situation. I get to show my kids what is it like to get knocked down and to get back up. And that's what motivated me to keep going, right? So this kind of just gives you an idea of how you start to operationalize the think model, right? Instead of, for example, instead of reacting impulsively, most people would start to get angry about the driver who would hit me, right? Should the police go after him? Should we sue him in court?
Yes.
What I learned was, you know what? I don't care and I wish him well because I need all of my energy to help me recover. And anger only would kind of sap my energy away. I need all of it to recover. And anger doesn't heal me. In fact, it does the opposite, right? So how do I respond intentionally by saying, wish you well, but I got to focus on recovery because the impulsive fear or anger is what would hold us back, right? And that's where you then learn the next part, which is N. How do you nurture yourself? How do you rebuild back your energy levels when you feel depleted? Because I was focused on that goal of day 174, sign up for Ironman race, and I really felt I wanted to show my kids you can bounce back from what are seemingly horrible circumstances.
Wow. Super. All I would say, super inspiring story. But one of the key learnings in this is also how you actually take care of your energy levels on a daily basis. Because yes, we all learn about time management, but it is also energy management because all of us have such limited energy at the end of the day. Now, where are we going to invest that energy? In what activity will drive the outcomes of what we want at the end of the day, which is boom, fantastic. I mean, experience for you, but a great story. Yes, please
Yeah.
share.
One of the most important factors that influence our energy levels is the people that you spend time with, right? Are those people going to drain your energy or are they going to recharge your energy, right? And some people, sometimes well-meaning friends and family members can be energy vampires,
Yeah.
right? So the first step is probably to just be aware. How do you feel after spending time with someone, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour or a day? And if they're going to be draining your energy, how can you spend less time with them? And how do I find people who are going to recharge me and spend more time with them?
Interesting. Interesting. Some great insights coming from Azran as we are kind of halfway through this podcast, this discussion. Before I go on to my next question, and I have quite a few, I have somebody, hi, Jeffrey, who is asking you a question. Hello to you, Jeffrey, from both of us. Something related to the current buzzword, AI. Yes. With AI becoming more integrated into mental health support, how do you see AI shaping the future of mental health resilience interventions while maintaining genuine human connection? This was a question I didn't have on my list. Thank you, Jeffrey, for asking. Over to you, Azran.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Jeffrey. So we invest, my team at Nellary invests very significantly on developing AI tools. However, we do not believe that AI and digital tools should replace the human connection part of mental health. Because we believe that human to human connection is important and you can't substitute that with a chatbot. Where AI can be very helpful is in helping you make decisions, in helping you process a lot of micro data points that as humans we're not able to process. I'll give one specific example, okay? To use natural language processing to identify and quantify emotion, sentiment, and potential distress by just looking at the words, nouns, sentence structures, and chat history, for example, to detect potential distress. So we spend a lot of time developing this. Now, a 32-year-old female engineer, right, was enrolled in a nullery program. She did some of the assessments. She wanted to improve her self-esteem, and start working on various things with nullery health coaches. But as we collect these micro data signals, which humans it's hard for us to process, but that's where AI algorithms are really good. The algorithm detected a potential sudden dip after a couple of months, right? And she wasn't reaching out for help. And this is the problem with all mental health. You expect that the distressed person to reach out for help, but when they're distressed, they're feeling helpless. But because we saw that dip, her assigned psychologist, Darlena, reached out to her and said, hey, what's going on? And she said, Darlena, thank you very much for reaching out to me. My husband's traveling around a lot. I'm stuck home with the kids. The kids are sick. I don't have a support system. It's performance appraisal at work. My boss is being horribly demanding and unfair. I really don't know what else to do. I was thinking of ending my life. She was expressing suicidal ideation, but she wasn't reaching out for help then. So this is an example of using AI type tools to recognize these micro moments so that we can intervene at the right time. So to summarize, we use AI and digital tools to systematize the predictable so that we can have time to humanize the exceptional.
Fantastic. I mean, yes, if we can help use technology to do the prediction analysis, I think that really helps a lot. I hope that answers your question, Jeffrey. If you have more, feel free to ask while we continue on our discussion. So that's great insight coming from you, Azan. There was also a study done at Naluri wherein it showcases, people showcase different levels of resilience at different age groups. So when you look at an age group, and I'm speaking from your report, when you look at people between 0 to 20 years, which is obviously at a very tender age, there is low resilience level. 21 to 30, it is medium resilience, and 31 to 40 and probably above is high resilience. Now, are we saying as we grow in terms of our age and experience, our resilient levels get better, or is there any further insight to it which you would like to share?
Well, on one hand, your first assertion, there's a lot of truth to it, because the more experiences we go through hardship, the problems that we're able to solve, it strengthens our resilience muscles, right? It's like going to the gym. The more I lift weights, the stronger I get because my muscles know how to handle that physical stress. So same thing, my brain can handle difficult situations, the more difficult situations I go through. Having said that, there is a real generational issue at play, right? Okay. Think about it, right? Like, and I'm going to focus on one thing, which is being overwhelmed with instantaneous choice. You see, when folks of our generation, when we were kids, when we were growing up, right? You might remember, I've got to wait for Thursday at 5 o'clock to watch my favorite cartoon because cartoons were very rare, right? Today, whatever I'm watching on these video streaming sites, they're telling me 10 shows that I should be watching. I feel I'm missing out on so many things just because the options are overwhelming. When we used to grow up to go shopping, maybe there's one neighborhood mall. Today, at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can shop, and whatever you buy, they're already telling you 5 things you are missing out that you should also buy. All right? True. Relationships. In school, there was probably that one girl or boy that you were interested in, and you really worked out the courage to ask him or her out, right? Today in the online world, right, you're flipping through dozens of people, swipe left, swipe right, like instantaneously. That never used to exist. And choice can be overwhelming when it is a proliferation of choice, nonstop choice, right? And so these are the realities of um, today's society. Another related part is what I call um, unintentional simultaneous multitasking, right?
Okay.
Because suddenly in a world of multiple screens and devices, our attention span has plummeted to like seconds, right?
Seconds, 7 seconds. Let's say it is seven
Within a
seconds.
exactly, right? And actually, the brain cannot actually multitask. What the brain does is 3 seconds WhatsApp, 4 seconds this message, 5 seconds I have a call. Every time you hop, the brain needs more energy to context switch. And so it used to be, let's say maybe in one day, the brain would go back and forth 800 times. In today's online world, it's 6,000 times. So imagine you, for example, jumping a little bit, right? Like one jump a little bit, you don't feel physically exhausted. But try 6,000 times a day. You're going to get very tired, even though each individual jump is tiny. That's what we're doing to our brains, right? And then finally, when you go to sleep, the quality of our sleep is reducing, and you're not giving time for the brain to rest, recharge, and be ready for the next day. And so you create this vicious cycle that unfortunately the younger generation are going through in a way that we never had to. We had time for our brain to mature, to get stronger, to learn how to focus, but they were not able to build focus muscles well today because of all this constant distraction.
So then, I mean, it brings me directly to the very obvious question: what can we do? How can
Hmm.
we support? What can we do? Because it is happening with all of us today. I will give you an example. We all put in an effort. We put up a podcast. The average attention span is 7 seconds for people to kind of flip through. Whether it is on LinkedIn and then you go on Facebook, there's enough information. You go on Insta, there's tons and tons and tons of information download happening, and that is why the attention spans have gone there. One, according to me, I mean, I'm not an expert like you, but according to me, one is focus on what you really want to gain. So suppose if I'm following a particular person, I probably would listen to that particular individual, and that's about it, and then do that focused part other than flipping over, like you said. And we all flip over. I'm talking to you, then I'm seeing in the message, then I'm replying to something, then I'm answering to somebody in the family, so on and so forth. So long story short, the question is, what should we do? What
You, know,
is
you bring up a very good word, focus. Now, here's a thought. Mental focus follows visual focus. Our eyes are actually a part of the brain. This is the only part of the brain that's exposed externally, right? So to learn how to build mental focus, one good place to start is learning visual focus. What are ways that we can learn visual focus? It could be as simple as drawing or coloring. It could be as simple as doing a jigsaw puzzle, right? Have you ever experienced trying to do a jigsaw puzzle, and when you're tired, you realize, I can't figure out where the pieces fit. But you go away, you sleep, the next morning, you're like, oh, this is where it fits, right? So you start to see how, when your brain is rest and recharge, your eyes can be able to focus and concentrate. So I would definitely, for example, either with children or even our colleagues at work, right, is to think about joint activities where it involves visual focus activities just to start with.
Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. To our audience out there, we still have around 15 minutes into this podcast. If you have any comments, questions, anything more in addition to what Vignesh and Jeffrey asked, just feel free to ask. We have Azran with us, who is really spilling out some great insights, some great wisdom, which is there for everybody to learn from. With that, I will continue. Um, what are the initial signs for a person to realize or acknowledge that he or she is having a mental health issue? And I will give you an example very simplistically. I go to office, I work, I live in a stressful environment. Like we all said, we have families to take care of, we have financial pressures, we have to deliver at the work front, whether it is office or entrepreneurial journey, whatever it is. But there's so many things we are doing. And at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my God, it's been a long day. It's been a tiring day. And this continues and this continues. Now, somewhere, either our boss or our line manager is not very supportive, at times, probably detrimental to our career growth. At times, our spouses are not very helpful. And there can be various things which are happening on a personal or professional front. At what point in time do I say things are not really fine and I'm going through a mental health issue?
Okay. So let me give you a simple checklist. Whether it is you checking in on yourself, whether you checking in on your spouse or children, or whether you're checking in on your team members at work. First part, and there's two parts to this. First part are the signs and symptoms. Number one on my list is sleep. Okay, sleep disruption, especially three types of sleep disruption. Number one, early insomnia. When you put your head on the pillow to sleep, after 30, 45 minutes, you still can't fall asleep. Number two, intermediate insomnia. You can sleep, but you're going to wake up 3-4 times in the middle of the night. Number three, terminal insomnia. After 3 or 4 hours, you wake up, you can't fall asleep again. So, sign number one, I will come back to sleep. Number two, typically appetite changes, right? Either suddenly you lose appetite or you have cravings for sugary and salty foods. This is a sign. Number three, a lot of tightness, soreness, especially in your neck and your lower back. Number four, physical symptoms of sickness, dizziness, kind of just, feeling unwell. Number five, mood swings, suddenly anger outbursts, right? Or kind of suddenly just being very sullen. And number six, feeling completely quiet or disconnected. Someone who would normally be very active online or participating, cameras go off, no reaction. Now, if you've never experienced any of these 6 symptoms, you are a robot. So first of all, in a way, those symptoms are very human. It's what makes us human. But here's the difference. Most of us humans can self-regulate, can bounce back after 1, 2, or 3 days of going through these symptoms. Where it becomes an issue is after 1 to 2 weeks, those combination of symptoms, not just 1 or 2, but maybe 3, 4, 5, or 6 of them are still persisting after more than 1 to 2 weeks. And in fact, the intensity of those symptoms are worsening after 1 to 2 weeks instead of getting better. That is when someone needs help. So it's okay for most of us. For example, for me, Vikram, whenever I'm feeling any of those symptoms, my go-to is cookies and cream ice cream. It makes my day feel so much better, right? For you, maybe it's walking outdoors or kind of connecting with a friend or spouse, right? We all have our ways to recharge after 1 or 2 or 3 days. But it is when it persists for more than 1 to 2 weeks, the symptoms actually worsen rather than get better after 1 to 2 weeks. That is when someone needs help.
Okay, great insights. Thank you. So when we identify that, and I'm looking up to kind of flip over another question before I go to the one I want. But then, is there a difference between depression and someone going through depression and someone saying, I have a mental health issue? So I'm just continuing from your answer, and I'm saying, I think I'm just going through a little bit of a mentally challenging situation, but I'm not depressed. So is there a difference, or do we categorize both into the same bucket?
Well, okay, so let's start with definitions, right? And without trying to get into kind of the medical part of it, depression can be thought of as a feeling of sadness, hopelessness, especially ruminating on something that has happened in the past, either something in the recent past or sometimes even childhood trauma, where those videos keep coming back again and again and again. Anxiety is about kind of fear of not having control of something that might happen in the future, right? And so you're playing scenarios in your head, even though that trigger may not actually happen, okay? So it kind of takes you away from the present moment. So first is that context. Second, all of us do feel depression and do feel anxiety. Depression and anxiety, by definition, is not the illness. Where it becomes an illness, where it becomes clinical level depression, clinical level of anxiety, is when it is not just 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. It is when it is more than 2 weeks in a row. It is when those feelings just get worse over 2 weeks, and it impairs your ability to do day-to-day tasks and chores at home or work. That is when it moves from regular depressive episodes or anxious episodes into clinical levels of depression and anxiety.
Okay. And then a lot of people, and I'm just trying to continue into the same wavelength, a lot of people get confused between situations like this, between the roles of a coach, a mentor, or a counselor. Now, and I'm really keen to gain your insights into this, because then you say, "Oh, but I have a coach. I have a lifestyle coach who's coaching me." Or somebody says, "I go to a regular mentor who's been mentoring me for the last decade or so." But is there a situation where you say, actually, a coach or a mentor is not the solution? It's probably a certified counselor. So how do I differentiate? At what point in time do I go where?
Well, so first of all, there are also, going down that spectrum, there's counselors, there's psychologists, and there's psychiatrists, right? So psychiatrists are medical professionals. And when the condition is so acutely clinical that you can benefit from medical intervention, right? So drugs, because the kind of the huge spike in or imbalance in our either serotonin hormones that kind of keep us calm, or our dopamine levels that keep us focused and excited are off kilter, right? And it's hard to kind of manage that just through talk therapy. Like, you actually need medical treatment to just stabilize the situation. That's when it requires psychiatric intervention. Psychologists are able to diagnose your situation, right? They cannot prescribe medication, but they can actually diagnose. This is a clinical level, right? Because it's no longer regular depression and anxiety, but it's a major depressive disorder, a generalized anxiety disorder. So a disorder, right? That means it's also a healthy situation. And the type of therapy goes kind of deeper into trying to help you uncover what were the kind of triggers to your situation. Counselors don't diagnose, but counselors can help you manage your depression, manage your anxiety, manage your situations by helping you use very similar coaching and mentoring techniques, questions that get you to reflect, questions that help you parse between what are the things you can control versus what are the things you cannot control. How do I look at that situation and think, okay, what's the positive I'm getting from it? Right? What am I, could I even benefit from something that might seem like it's in a harmful or disadvantaged state? The kind of reflective questions that a coach would use, counselors do something very similar, right? They use reflective questions that, instead of looking only on one perspective, how can I reflect and also think of my other options that I might have available to address this? And so that's also where, it is a spectrum, right? So counseling, psychologists, psychiatrists, but it also then gets into kind of life coaches and mentors on that same spectrum.
Okay. Interesting, very interesting. I'm going to go to the last couple of questions in this, and then there is something more, not more, but something interesting as well at the end of the session. How is mental health and resilience connected with team resilience from an organizational dynamics perspective?
Well, so number one, the same think model still applies. When we are confronted with a difficult situation, I'll give you one good example. During COVID, an airline like AirAsia cannot fly anymore, right? Imagine going to a business where 90 or 100% of your revenues poof, disappear, right? So you can't control the pandemic. What can you control? And the credit I would give to that team, because I'm no longer with the airline, was and within a few months, they said, well, we can't fly. What are the assets we have? We've got this app with 40 million users. Can we turn AirAsia.com into a ride hailing and food delivery service? Because that was what was growing during COVID, right? And focus on what you can control, focus on what you have, build on it. Maybe they were not going to overtake a Grab like service, but the credit you got to give them was they tried and focused on what can I do instead of just lamenting, oh, this pandemic out of my control, and you just go into a tailspin, right? You create a hopeful out of guys, right? Like imagine if we could create another Grab, right? It gives a whole new growth engine. You rally your troops because they can see a path out of that difficult situation. You're taking actions instead of just blaming and asking governments for subsidies and help and the retrenchment part, but saying let's channel our efforts, redeploy people into what are the things that we can act on, right? So that's a very good example of the think model and resilience at a corporate or organizational level, handling very tight situations.
Okay, great. So, and then, immediately continuing to that, how can a leader, somebody who's leading a team, enhance the team resilience level with his or her team? Any tips on that for a leader
Well,
specifically?
so number one, I think our big roles as a leader is to build on what you said earlier, which is I need to manage the energy of my team members. I need to manage less the time and tasks, but the energy levels. When do I push my team hard? When do I ensure that they're all kind of resetting, recharging? Guys, take time off because this next 2 weeks, we're going to go through an audit period. There's going to be late nights. I really want to make sure you guys are recharged and refreshed. That is a true leader who understands that performance requires kind of peaks and troughs. I need to reset to rebuild energy levels, and I think that's a very important part of leaders as energy orchestrators in the company.
Interesting. And I'm sure that will come as an official title pretty much soon, as we are seeing a chief happiness officer coming as a title in many of the organizations soon. So that would be another title which will come through. We will give you due credit, Azran, if that comes through this podcast as the official title.
CEO, Chief Energy Orchestrator.
My last question on this topic, and I'm seeing there's none more coming from the audience. So, how can an individual today build a mentally healthy and resilient mindset? Your top 5 tips for it.
Well, actually, I'm just going to focus on the one thing which we already talked about.
Okay.
And I'm going to start by saying, I grew up in the 1970s where we didn't have iPhones and TVs. So we used to play in the forest at the back of the house, right? And one of the crazy things I did as a kid, I like to catch grasshoppers and then trap them under a jar because we are sadistic little kids and watch this desperate grasshopper try to jump, but every time it gets knocked in the jar, right? Because within a couple of hours, you lift that jar and the grasshopper is no longer trying to jump out because it's given up. It's tried so long, it's like there's no point, pointless. So the one thing I want to leave you with is we all have that jar that's pinning us down. Sometimes we're not even aware that the jar no longer is. Maybe it was parents telling us, oh, don't bother, don't try, or friends laughing at our ideas, that we suddenly believe, oh, I can't do that. You believe your own limitations. But guys, many times that jar is no longer there, right? It's us recognizing that what limits me are people telling me I cannot do, and I somehow believe it. But the jar is no longer there.
It's a wide world right up there. Extremely nice, superb insights, Azran. Before we wrap up, I didn't realize the hour just flew past by, but some great insights for you. But before we wrap up, we on our podcast, we also have something called as the fun rapid fire round, which is the FRFR. And this is a fun round where we get to know a little bit about you. It's got nothing to do with the topic we discussed. Probably your own well-wishers or people from your network of fraternity will hear this and they'll say, I didn't knew that about Azran till date. So I will try. I'm just
Sure.
going to ask 5 questions. Are you ready for it?
Fire away.
Okay. I know, you're a triathlon person, but I know you go cycling within and across country. Which is your favorite track or place you love to visit and cycle every time?
Oh, Tanjung Karang by the rice paddy fields on the west coast, just about an hour outside of Kuala Lumpur.
Okay. Second one, which is, I'm assuming being a CEO of an airline before, and with all what you've done in life before till date, you would have traveled quite extensively. So, having said that, which is the craziest country you have flown to and why? Why is it crazy?
Oh, wow. Well, you know what? I'm going to say Kazakhstan because it's a country of many contrasts, from freezing -30-degree temperatures to searing hot 50-degree heat, from amazing natural canyons and rivers to very modern cities. The diversity of cuisines. It is literally, Central Asia is a region that often gets overlooked politically, geopolitically, and socially globally, but it's got so many wonderful contrasts.
Okay, that's an interesting place. While you're answering Kazakhstan, I'm assuming Archana is giving a smiley on Kazakhstan. Thank you, Archana. I'll take that smile for now. Going to the third one, who is your living idol and why? Have you met him or her till date?
It's my own children.
Okay.
Because I love how they say, well, number one, they're willing to speak up, they're willing to challenge, they're willing to do things and look at things the way I don't. And so I look up at that kind of raw, youthful exuberance and optimism that I hope to still nurture within my own self.
Very nice. And the very fact that that response came so spontaneously with you, it's just like right up there, up your alley to kind of answer and share. This is fantastic. I'm really glad your children must be proud of you, and you are equally proud of them, I'm sure. Fourth question. One thing about you, which a lot of people within your network, I know you are quite a social person, or within your fraternity, still don't know about you. Is there anything left, Azran, that people really don't know about you as much as you socialize around?
So I am a stress eater.
Okay.
Right. So I go through panic attacks, either before board meetings and after board meetings, before big pitches, and I resort to food as my source of comfort. So it depends on whether there's healthy food available, or, as I said, cookies and cream ice cream, I will melt.
Excellent. Very interesting. So if any of you who know Azran quite well, if you see him in a nice corner, literally binging on the food, the only thing you should think of is, it's not that he's hungry. You should just think of he's probably panic eating, or he's absolutely stressed at that point in time. Am I right in saying that?
Indeed. Absolutely.
Okay, next time I should catch you with the cookies and cream, and then I'll come to know. Okay, the last one, and while we are on the food, definitely the last question. Your favorite Malaysian cuisine and a restaurant you go very often in Malaysia to say, yeah, this is my go-to place. I will go there very often. And the Malaysian.
Oh, banana leaf rice at Rickshaw Bangsar.
Okay, so there you go. That's a little promotion for Rickshaw Bangsa for the banana leaf rice. I know they do a good job. I've not been there very often, but a couple of times, and yes, I think they're quite good. So well, that kind of wraps up my fun fire rapid round kind of questions. That also wraps up. We are pretty much on the hour, on the dot. But that's also wraps up our podcast today on mental health and resilience, and also its connection with team resilience. I know there were a lot of questions answered, but there are also, it's a huge topic. It's a Pandora's box. Once opened, cannot shut it down. So there is so much of insight and inputs on that. So to the audience who listened to us throughout the hour, whether it was on YouTube, some of you, whether you were on LinkedIn, thank you so much. Genuinely, thank you. I hope it benefited you. Azran shared some great insights, but then he's very much, I know he's somebody who's very active on LinkedIn. So if you have any further questions, you can either put it into the questions here, or you can connect with Azran directly and you can ask him too. But and I'm going to take the compliment little one with Archana coming through saying, nice, thank you, Archana. We'll take whatever little love and compliments come our way. Any parting words from you, Azran, before we wrap up for the night?
Well, I'm still learning. So to the extent that there's any feedback, please send them my way.
Okay, that was very humbly put for all the knowledge and wisdom he shared, but that's how great leaders are. So on that particular note, I'm going to say thank you to each one of you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining tonight on the Curious Mind series podcast. And we look forward to having you again soon. And thank you so much, Azran. It was lovely to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, Vikram.
Yes. Bye. Bye, everyone.